Alright, guys. We're pretty much going straight into this. Let me know if you guys can hear me in the chat right now. Just let me know. I see we have 25 concurrent viewers and 25 likes, so that's great. That's pretty good. But what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel once again. Currently moved into the new place now. Yesterday I was feeling a little bit low energy, but I feel a little bit better today. So as you can see on your screen right now, you're probably like, why does OnPoint have another landslide map on his screen? It's because I have kind of developed this new model, and I'm gonna go over it. I spent a couple hours today building this model, and there's a reason why the landslide victory like this is currently on display. It's because I essentially am going to start building a county by county model where pretty much what it does is essentially, I have done the major swing states. I did Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. Those are the ones that I did. Those are the counties or the states that I basically did the county by county analysis for. So literally all of Wisconsin is here. You go to 2020, you look at all of the data, you look at the NPV from 2004 to 2020, you look at the average shift, the estimated non-popular vote shift, and the final margin. And this final margin basically decides the percentages and the vote shares each candidates have, and the state vote is essentially calculated. And so right now, if Trump were to win the popular vote by 4.3%, he'd be winning Wisconsin by 9.7%. Now, the reason why I actually have this is because this is where the whole model kind of depends on the person using it. The model does its job in calculating how the counties go, but really where the power lies in is actually through the popular vote meter, where essentially you kind of have a thing where you kind of have to basically guess it right or get it as close as possible. And there are several ways to do this. Gold Crown Politics actually has a few models that have been proven to be somewhat accurate, and Rasmussen is actually a more accurate pollster than most people think they are. If you actually average out their final results for 2016 and 2020, their final averages are actually more accurate than most mainstream media. I think they had Biden up by like 5.2, and they had Clinton up by like 2.6 or something like that. Like, it was really close. Like, they were basically within a point of the popular vote, like literally within a point. And so right now, their average from their last three polls of Trump versus Harris, I believe, according to Gold Crown Politics, is 4.3%. That is what their average is. And their averages have been about half a point off. And so based on all of the, trends that I put down for the states, this is basically what you get. You would get Trump winning 330 electoral college votes. Now, what I've also done is, for the states that I have not created models for, I have actually gone ahead and applied my own guesstimated trend line, which I am going to be updating these. These are not going to stay that way. I am going to be updating these as time goes on. Now, what's pretty interesting is, yes, this is a little bit better. Like, for example, if Harris is winning the popular vote by 2%, right? Like, if she's winning the popular vote by 2, she actually still loses the presidential election, because Wisconsin and Pennsylvania would be huge victories. She'd barely win Michigan, and she would lose Arizona by a point, and Nevada would be a 0.8 percentage point victory, and Georgia would be like a lean margin for her. Now, this model is probably going to be superior to the previous one, and in fact, this model is actually interesting because it seems to me like the trends from all the counties are actually lining up from my previous model. Like, even Arizona is actually voting to the right of Nevada in my other forecast, and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania are some of Trump's best swing states on that map. So I do find it pretty interesting that that is the case. However, what I am going to try to set up for this is actually a demographic turnout model, which essentially what will happen is, clearly the way this works is it basically gets the population turnout from the 2020 election, but obviously that's going to be flawed because I can't rely on the 2020 turnout. Some places may turn out more, some less. So what's going to end up happening is, what we're essentially going to look at is, we're basically going to try to create something where you can adjust the turnout nationally for certain groups. So I kind of have it down here. So whites nationally, Trump gains 4, blacks, Trump gains like 15, Hispanics, Trump gains 25, and other Trump gains like 10. And based on that, the populations, or at least, well, it'll probably have to be turnout percentages. So what basically ends up happening is, if whites, the percentage of turnout is up by a certain amount, you'll have certain numbers. Now, more than likely, every turnout group's probably going to go down, but blacks may go down the most, which is going to be a problem for Harrison, Georgia, because they're actually a pretty significant amount of the electorate. Like, they're a pretty high amount of the electorate there. Now, I have not actually tested this to 2020 yet. I am planning on testing this pretty soon to the 2020 election, so that is going to be pretty interesting to see what results this gives me, because you basically go back 4 cycles. You go back from 2020 to 2004, which allows for basically the trend to be less intense, because if you only do it from 2 cycles, like 1 cycle trend, the swings are going to be too elastic. Like, I did that, and Georgia in a tied popular vote was like D+5. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I probably have to go farther back than 2004, to be honest with you. I probably have to go farther back than that, because some of these swings are a little intense. Like, if we go to Georgia, I want to actually find it here and see if I can get it up. Like, some of the swings in Georgia are pretty intense. Like, you're talking about a 14-point shift between the partisan leaning of every county. Like, that's not really gonna happen, because that necessarily hasn't even happened. So it kind of depends on what I'm looking at here, but I may need to actually go back farther than 2004 in a lot of these models. I may actually need to go back even farther, and that may give me more accurate results in the forecast. So that'll be pretty interesting to look at as time goes on. But overall, I mean, and what I do is, instead of looking at the raw results and how much they've shifted, you basically tie the popular vote nationally. So really here, this is like the partisan leaning of every single county according to the nation. So Adams County in Wisconsin was actually voting to the left of the nation by 7.7% back in 2004. In 2020, it voted 30 points to the right of the nation. So it's like a completely different ball game. But if we were to go to like the 90s or something like that, like if we were to go all the way back to like 94 or something, you're going to probably see that county votes even more to the left. So that's kind of the thing there. If we look at Adams, we could see it's a 13-point margin, and the popular vote victory was about 7. So actually, it doesn't vote as much to the left as it's made out to be there. It's probably voting to the left of the nation by 3 or 4 points or so. So I may go back to 94 and see how the trends kind of look. And I'm probably going to have to test it out with 2020 as well to see how long of the trend I kind of have to look at in order to get the more accurate results. To be honest, I mean, if we were to go over here and even create the 2020 version already, I tried doing something like this before, and it was actually a lot easier now than I thought it was, because I didn't know you could copy and paste all the results. Like, I didn't know that. So it was like kind of weird, because like now, if I were to let's put the popular vote tied, right? And if I do, for this scenario, I guess we'll go back to 92. It would be 88, actually. I would have to go back to 1988 in Wisconsin to look at the trends there. So if we were to see that, we got to go all the way back over here. And if we go ahead and apply this, I'm like just curious, because I want to see what happens and how accurate I could get it. We have to put the popular vote on minus 4.5%. So that's what's going to put the state in play. or at least Wisconsin. So I'm going to actually see how accurate this could be. And I'm going to show you guys this live because I want to be able to kind of really show what's actually going on here. So I believe that these are the turnout numbers from 90 something, right? So if we go to, okay, hold on. So this is +4. We go down here. That's kind of weird, but okay. All right. So let's go to 88, and if we go and get ahead and get the margins, because it's got to go from 1988 to 16, and I'm gonna do this live so you guys could actually see, like, this is like how much effort. Well, I mean, it's not really that much effort, but like I'm really putting, thought-wise, I'm putting in a lot of effort into this. Like I'm really trying to get this down to a science where you could plug this in and essentially get it within a couple points, basically. Like that's my goal for this. That's literally the goal. The goal is literally to have this fine-tuned to the point where you could just plug this in. You could plug in the popular vote and some like demographic model changes and essentially get the popular vote like spot on, or get the electoral college spot on. So I want to actually see the margins here. I want to make sure they're correct. You see, nope, that is not how they're supposed to go. So this is why ChatGPT, I love ChatGPT because it makes this so much easier. Like if I want to flip the signs from negative to positive and vice versa, I literally just plug it in here and it literally just does it for me right away instead of having to do it by hand. So it makes my life a lot easier. Now what's going to happen here is you're going to see that, you know, clearly this is voting really hard to the left, but what's going to end up happening is I'm going to actually have to really set this back, because if we look at 988, we see Bush 53.4% to 45.6, so that's 7.8. So all of these actually have to swing 7.8 percentage points in the opposite to the left, because since Bush is winning the popular vote by that many points, you have to swing all the counties by the opposite margin to get like the true partisan leaning of every single state. That's basically how that works. That's that concept. It's the same thing. Like if you tie the national popular vote and look at all of the averages by state, that's where you'll see that kind of unfold. Now we go 92, 96, 2000, 2004, 2008, 2012. So that is 6 cycles. And actually, it may need to be more than that because you're trying to... Okay, yeah. So this is the estimated shift for every single cycle in all of those counties. And right now, Wisconsin's 0.89, but I have not put in the 2016 numbers yet. So we'll see how that ends up looking. Let's see. Because basically everything's pretty much plugged in. I mean, at least for 2004, everything's essentially plugged in. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go to 2016 and see what the margins are. Now, I do have to edit this because I am going to have to shift this to the right by this many points. That, I think, is actually going to be enough to put the state in the tilt column. So... for the Democrat. Yeah, okay, so it is there. It's 1.4. Now we're gonna put in the 2016 numbers and see how accurate it's gonna end up being. I'm like really curious to actually see this. And luckily for this one, I don't really have to do the numbers thing because they're already the signs are the correct number. So let's see how accurate this ends up being. So you basically have to shift this. Okay, all right, so. Alright, let's see where everything's at. Okay, so it's like, literally, it's almost predicting a Biden win. It's super close. It's like really, really, really close. But it barely has Trump winning in Wisconsin. It's like basically within a point or so. Basically. Now, I'm curious to see what happens if I do 92. Because that's why I want to play around with this now, so you guys can see me do it live. And then if I do in fact need to put this to 92, then this needs to shrink by 1. So it would be 6. So, okay. So now, if I'm going to do 92, then what I'm going to have to do is go to 2016, put 1992. If this gives me like almost the exact margin, I'm probably going to just use this one per se. So, alright, so here is the county. We go down. I'm going to have to do the flipperoo thing again, but that's fine. That's not a really big deal. We go over here, plug this in here, and then kind of scoot this out a little bit. And then these margins are going to have to be plugged into this right here. So let's see what ends up happening, because I want to try to really get this down to a science, guys. I mean, I want to really try to get this down to a science. Now, I know that he won the popular vote in 1992 by, I believe it was, let's actually look, because then this is going to have to be shifted to the right now. So he won the popular vote by basically, like, what would that be? 43 minus 37.4 is 5.6%. So this is how much he won it by. So if we were to go here and add 5.6% to all these states here, then we'll be able to see what ends up happening. Okay, there it goes. So it has Wisconsin as lean Democrat. So it's not perfect, but it definitely, this is going to be decently accurate. Now, if we clearly saw that like white turnout would be up, you would kind of be able to predict that the state would end up flipping. And even the Michigan margin's actually not even that off either. So that's going to be interesting to look for as well. Our Dogs Show for 5 says, is Nebraska changing their law to winner take all before this election? That could guarantee Trump the election, as that probably gives him 269. I mean, I don't really think that that's going to end up happening per se. But that's a little bit interesting, because I don't necessarily know if it's going to... I don't know. I don't think they're going to do it, but I don't think the election is going to come down to that. Now, if we look at Polymarket, I've seen that somebody's mentioning it there. Trump is actually now back at 49%. He was like at 46%, 45% like yesterday. And now Pennsylvania is in the toss-up category, and Arizona and Nevada are also toss-ups. And Georgia is now back into the lean column here. It was a little close. I think it was like 51% Trump, or 52, 53%. Now he's back up by a little bit. And this is right after Harris kind of unveiled her economic plan. So that's pretty interesting. And also we gotten slightly better polling for Trump. So that's definitely helping him as well. Nationally, that definitely was. It was 53-44 yesterday. Really? He was at 44%? Yes, really? Damn, that's like a big shift. That's actually really interesting. James Goldcrown Politics' model predicts 2020 perfectly with perfect margins. I mean, they're like a decimal point off or so, but pretty much, yeah, his model is pretty good. He basically, because he predicts the popular vote very accurately. Like, his popular vote models, if you average them out, I think it's Biden up by like 5.1% or something like that, like 5.1. That's enough to predict the election somewhat fairly easily, to be honest. So, just saying. We can see here. Am I universally banned from every chat I've tried chatting on? What do you mean? But yeah, clearly he picked up quite a bit in the betting odds. He's already picking up. So clearly there's a bit of a sentiment shift, 100%. So that is definitely pretty interesting, to say the least. Now, looking at a state like, let's see, Michigan, right? Because this is one where I'm kind of like, is it really going to work out? Like, you know, so we're going to see this. So we're going to go back. We're going to do how many cycles? 6. So it's 6 cycles. I want to see how good the 2020 margin can be for Michigan. I'm actually curious. to see how good it could get. So we would obviously do 92 all the way to 16, and then Biden vote. Okay, so what we can do now is we can go ahead and go to Wisconsin, or Michigan, excuse me. So we go to Michigan, we go down here, grab the numbers. We basically like plug them in. Okay, yeah, no, I'm gonna have to move these around a little bit. Okay, all right, so if we go over here, and we got to get rid of how many? Okay. Okay, I guess it's that we got to get rid of these. Oh, that kind of seeped into the... Okay, so these are the ones that matter, essentially. So we got to grab these, delete those, put these over here. Let's see what happens when I grab all of these. Okay, so that's where that goes. So Leonardo Matos for 5 says, I'm Brazilian. I'm asking God every day for Trump to win this election. It's the future of the free world. No, I completely agree. I mean, I definitely think that that's actually the case. So, 100%. All right, guys, you know what? Give me 1 second, because Gold Crown Politics is actually going to join the stream. So let me go ahead and actually set this up really, really quick. It'll probably take like a minute or so, but give me a second. Alright guys, so he's going to join pretty much any second now. I'm going to let him obviously join whenever he can, but he will join at some point in a couple minutes, more than likely. So I just kind of had to set up the chat for him to. Okay, yeah, he's about to join like any second, so you'll hear him pop in, and then we're gonna like have a discussion and whatnot. We're almost 100 subs away from 30K, guys. If you guys have a friend or anybody that knows about this kind of stuff, that's interested in electoral politics, guys, make sure to get them to subscribe to the channel, because definitely 100%, you know, we are almost at 30,000 subs. TJ Flack, thoughts on Trump hiring his old campaign manager? I thought it was a smart move. He needed to hire his old team. Now, Lavasita and Susan Wilds, I mean, dude, Trump has been polling the best he's ever polled ever. Like, this entire cycle with them being the campaign managers. So I can't really say they've been doing a bad job. I don't really think that that's the case. So, I mean, I don't really think that would be the case. 5 test unsubscribed. What? That's weird. But either way, at this point now, we pretty much have 2016. All right, guys. Gold Crown Politics is now here. Hello. You're live. You're live now. So let me just make sure.
Hey guys.
Okay, yeah, okay. Your audio's good. Yep. All right, you're on. So guys, Gold Crown Politics is here really quick. You know, we're not going to be streaming for that much longer, probably for maybe 20, 30 more minutes, but we are going to have a discussion about the election. So Gold Crown, actually, like you could probably see, am I sharing my screen with you or no?
No, I can't see it.
Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I was telling you about this county thing that I was developing, and what it is it literally tracks every single county like this. So basically you get all the results, you look at the margins going back to 1992 to 2016, and you look at like basically you calculate the partisan leaning of every single state. So since Clinton won the popular vote by 5.6, you basically have to add that to all of the like counties, and you get like the partisan leaning of all of them. And then in 2016 you do the exact same thing. Now I haven't imported the 2016 results yet into this, but when we do, I'll kind of be able to show you what's roughly going on there. But it is pretty cool that we do have something like, I did it for Wisconsin for 2020, and the margin's 1.5 for Biden. And then right now, and that's with the actual popular vote. Like if you accurately guess the popular vote, even with yours, like you had what, like Biden plus 5.3, right?
My model was like Biden plus 5.1.
Okay, if you have that, he's actually, it's like plus 2.1. So it's not like perfect, but it's within margin of error. It's definitely a lot better than most state polls. For sure. It's definitely a lot better than most state polling. Now, Michigan, all I actually have to do left is input the 2016 results into this, and then I'll kind of be able to see what it would have actually given me. I think the margin of victory here is going to be pretty high for... I think it's going to end up being pretty high for Biden. It's probably going to be over 5 points, which is kind of but again, it's within 2. Like, it's not like... You know what I'm saying? Okay, so
yeah,
we have
so better than the polls. Yeah.
Okay, that's weird. So okay, that's Wisconsin. I was looking at the completely wrong thing. Okay, so 1996 or 1992, 2016, and then here we gotta do. I think I gotta go up here and do plus 5.6. Did I input everything already? Yes, I did. Okay, good. Are those the correct margins for 1996? If while I'm doing this right now, I'm doing this live because I want people to see like what I actually do for the channel and stuff. So while you're doing that, you could go ahead and explain like what you're doing to like calculate the popular vote and where you kind of have all the states and stuff.
Yeah, so what I do is I'm very similar to On Point. I basically I first try to calculate the national environment first, and I have a couple models that do that.
Well, that's actually not what
And
I do. You know how my model works, right? It's like you plug in the RCP aggregate and then the favorabilities into the model, and then it kind of just calculates the popular vote itself based on the state margins. That's kind of what it does.
Okay.
But what's interesting is that a lot of the state trends on the county map, because I did Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, and a lot of the county trends are actually like lining up with my other model. Like they're all like Michigan's the first one to fall for Trump, and then it would be Georgia, and then like a few others. Like it goes in the same order basically, which is pretty interesting. So,
Yeah.
but either way, continue.
Yeah, so I definitely I try to calculate the popular vote first. I don't go off of any state polling. I know that you're, kind of very against this the state polls as well. But yeah, so I try to calculate the national environment first. I think that's most important. And I think, this election cycle, we have the most data of really any other election cycle. I mean, 2020, you could have gotten the national environment pretty well. 2016, that would have been much harder because you did not have an incumbent. And so you didn't have like a job approval to go off of. You really only had favorability. But now we have multiple indicators. We have, favorability for Trump. We have Harris with her job approval. We also have her favorability as well. And so basically in my model, I look at like multiple different things. I look at job approval, favorability, as I said. I also look at polling bias, things like that. I also look at kind of like the most accurate pollsters over time as well. Yeah, so most of my models are indicating a 4 to 5 or plus 4 to 5 for Trump in the national environment this cycle, which definitely is a lot more bullish for Trump than I'd say, like, the vast majority of forecasters. My understanding is you have like a +1 or +2 for Harris. Is that right?
That's basically what I have right now, but that's calculated out of the model. I mean, I don't really think that's going to be the popular vote. I think Trump's going to win the popular vote. So, but yeah. I like having that model because it kind of gets rid of a lot of my biases and things like that. So that's kind of like why I like having that, because if I don't have that, then it's like I would probably still be predicting, oh, Trump's going to flip Virginia. Like, well, funny enough, actually, if I put the 4.3 percentage point popular vote victory for Trump based on the Rasmussen average, it does actually have Virginia barely flipping, so which is kind of interesting. But where do you kind of have the states right now, like in terms of your margins? Like, where are they right now? And can you explain to them kind of like how you go about looking at like the state trends?
Yeah. So for the swing states, I have those as like 4 to 6 point wins. Wisconsin is, I believe, +6 for Trump. Michigan is +4. Pennsylvania is +6. Arizona's +6, and Georgia, I believe, is about I want to say 6 or 7. North Carolina is like +10 for Trump, and the reason for those margins is because of the +4 national environment for Trump. So if you look at the partisan leanings of all those states, they all vote to the right of the country. And so you look at the Rust Belt, for example, like Wisconsin voted 4 points to the right of the country in 2020. I think it's going to trend to the left this cycle. I have it as like a 6 point win for Trump. It's going to vote 2 points to the right of the nation. But yeah, in terms of like state trends, the majority of the swing states have been trending to the right. Nevada plus all the 3 Rust Belt states. Nevada in particular has been trending to the right as of recently. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania as well. And then you have the Sun Belt swing states, Arizona and Georgia, have been trending to the left, the more pro-establishment states. But yeah, and so for my for my election model, I do use kind of state trends as a portion of my model. I also look at demographics as well. But in terms of like, which states are trending to the left and which have been trending to the right, it is kind of hard to, kind of measure exactly like what's going to happen, like because the Rust Belt, for example, it has been trending to the right, as I said, but I actually have the Rust Belt trending left this cycle because white voters, in particular the white working class, those kind of voters, union voters, especially in the Rust Belt, they're very prevalent there. They're not going to Trump is showing some signs of kind of maxing out with this group in the crosstabs. And he's kind of improving more with non-white voters as a whole. And so, despite the fact that the Rust Belt is more kind of pro-populist, like they're more bullish for a Trump Vance kind of ticket. I think that they're still they're still going to trend to the left. But I'd say that kind of measuring that it is kind of difficult. Now I think that for like Arizona and Georgia, for example, those I still see trending to the left, just because like Arizona, it clearly is an establishment state. I think the border is going to slow down that leftward trend, especially over time,
Right.
as that becomes a bit more of a larger issue. Georgia, that's a little harder. I think that Trump is certainly making gains with African Americans this election cycle, but it is still an establishment-leaning state. I think that Harris is definitely doing better with younger voters as well, and the Sun Belt has a higher percentage of younger voters. Those states are younger, and so it's just kind of a combination of like the demographics and the state trends that I use in my model. But I think that the most important thing that you can do is to calculate the national environment first. And, if you get that within like a couple points, you're already going to be better than like 90% of forecasters,
Yeah.
because, like the state margins are just so bad. It's like, it's just horrible.
Yeah,
Like
the New York Times
poll.
put that they put out the worst polls in the world.
Yeah, yeah. It's just ridiculous. I mean, you look at the 2020 margins, on that map, just ridiculous. Like Ohio was off by like 9 points, Florida was off by like 8.5 at this time 4 years ago. It's just
Right.
you can't use state polling. It's just way too inconsistent.
So
I do think that the go
look
ahead.
at this. This is super interesting. If you look at my screen, I just did Michigan 2020 to kind of show like what would happen, and it does actually predict Biden winning Michigan. It does have him winning it, albeit kind of. Well, actually, let me see something. I think I did that. Did I do that wrong? I might have done this incorrectly. Yeah, no, I think I did do this wrong. Yep. Okay. So, all right. Oh, that's why. Why am I doing it like this? This is. Oh, wait. Hold on. I'm sorry. I don't know why I was touching this one. Okay. So, this does actually have Biden, like, narrowly getting Michigan. It does have him winning it by 1.4%. And then Wisconsin's like 1.5. So, again, it's not perfect, but it's pretty decent. And even some of the county margins are somewhat good. Like Wayne on here is 38.8% for Biden, and he won it by 38.1. And then like Oakland is like D plus 14 in 2020, and here I have Biden winning it by 11.3. And you see if he were to win it by 14, his state margin actually goes up a decent amount. So this does overestimate some areas for Trump, like Kent County. I think actually goes to, it does actually go to Trump for some reason. Here it does actually still go for him, even though Biden won that by like 6.1%. So it's a little iffy, and you would kind of have to go back to 2016 to kind of look at like the estimated errors and whatnot. But overall, I'd say it's pretty solid actually.
I mean, yeah, it's still really good. I mean, only like less than a point and a half off. That's better than any state polling average I've ever seen. So
No, yeah, it's like it's basically off by like 2 points essentially. And if you get Wisconsin, like if you were to go to 2020, right, and you look at the 2020 results per the county. So if we were to go over here and get all of these, right, and basically apply the margin, so essentially it would be like I can actually go over here for this. I can go over here, grab these, go to 2020 to Wisconsin, and what I can do is basically have the 2016 or the 2020 margins up here, and then kind of look at the margins here and basically calculate the error. So I can do like what would it be, L4 minus R4. So that's basically the error, pretty much. And then it basically calculates it for every single county. It literally does it for every single county. I don't know why it's hold
Yeah.
on. Let me go ahead and then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to apply this to the 2024 model to Wisconsin and see if it kind of ends up working out there. So now what I can do is I can get this, go over here to Wisconsin and apply these numbers over here, and then once you kind of get this, you basically have a somewhat accurate model. I wonder what the model margin's going to be. We're going to see right now, but okay. So it is going to be. So now Trump is actually up in Wisconsin. He's okay. So if the popular vote is D+2, he's up by 3.6. So if the popular vote is tied, he's up by 5.6% in the model, basically. When you apply the 2020 errors from the previous model, he's up by 5.6. And you could probably do this for Michigan too. So if we were to go to Michigan and go over here to the 2020 margins. So basically you go over here. So you go to the 2020 margins, and then you apply this over here, and then you were to do, you would basically end up doing, I believe it's R. Yeah, the Michigan is going to be off by a bit because some of the Republican counties get like way too overestimated. Yeah, some of the counties are going to be off by a bit. So, if you were to apply this to 2024, let's see what ends up happening in Michigan. Trump's actually up by, oh wow. Okay, so actually look at this. So Wisconsin, because right now, look at my screen, I have the popular vote tied, right? It's 0 points, so it's tied. So Michigan is a 5.2 percentage point margin. When you apply the 2020 errors from the model, if you apply the 2020 errors, you get plus 5.2 Michigan. So that's kind of interesting because that's pretty impressive, to be honest. Those are the Wisconsin, Michigan are the only ones I've done. But like, even if Harris were to win the popular vote by 2 points, like I have it, she's still losing by 3 points in both of those states. And if your margin comes to fruition, which is, I believe, is 3.9, Trump is winning Wisconsin by like 9 points and winning Michigan by 9 points as well. So it's pretty interesting how that kind of works out. I mean, I'm going to definitely play with it later, but I think it is pretty fascinating that those kind of lined up that way. I still haven't done Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, or Nevada's 2020 models yet. So, but you do see when you apply the errors from the previous model, you do get something pretty realistic out of the Rust Belt. And Michigan actually trends to the right more than Wisconsin does this cycle, because for it to be at 5.2%, it would have to trend like 4 points to the right. Wisconsin would only have to trend less than 2 points. So, but it would actually make sense though, because Michigan has more African American population, and Trump's gaining with that group. So it actually would make more sense for Trump to gain in Michigan, like in terms of the trend. So I'm curious to see how it ends up for the other swing states, but it's going to be pretty interesting because they're probably all going to vote together with each other pretty decently. And like the 2020 models aren't bad. They're not the worst. I mean, Wisconsin's like 1.5% and Michigan's like 1.4%. And this is a model that you don't need to look up any polling data. You just get all the counties, you add them up. I could technically go all the way back to like the 60s and find all the errors and average them out and plug them into the new model to get like the most accurate possible result ever. Like you could technically do that. with this. But obviously, Michigan voting to the right of Wisconsin is kind of not good. And some of the Republican counties are a bit overestimated, but I guarantee you, if you were to like go back to 2016 and do like the error corrector, you probably would have these be even more accurate. So that is pretty interesting.
It is for sure. Yeah, I mean, you go county by county, and you're still better than really any of the polls. It's still, I think that, yeah, predicting elections is like you gotta do a more non-conventional way. Like I definitely agree with Alan Lichtman. Like, to predict elections, you can't use polling because it's just it's not good. No, it's
Yeah,
not
but
enough,
his
so.
model now is, I mean, he's cooked. It's not even the worst model in the world. He just hasn't like done the best. Somebody asked you, would you be able to ask Goldcrown how his models performs in 2016 and 2012? I know you use the favorability numbers for like, the candidates and stuff like that, but I wonder how it would be. You should test your model to 2012 and see how that would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for 2012, you could have estimated Barack Obama's vote share like really well with job approval, because you adjust for undecided, and it would have been about a half point off. I'm not sure. Like for a third party vote share, like, because you can look up like Gallup. Like Gallup obviously has like they had like some polls that had third party vote share, but I couldn't find any like
Aggregates,
good sample size. Yeah, because RCP they didn't do third party vote share back then, which is really unfortunate. They didn't have like a four-way race with like Stein and whoever else was running, but yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that's missing though, third party vote share. If I had access to that, my model would probably have been really spot on in all the incumbent years, like 2012 for Obama and 2004 for Bush as well. And yeah, that's the thing. Like, job approval is much more accurate than favorability. Favorability, like, because like 2012, you look at Romney's favorability, it was like 49%, I think, and he only ended up getting 47. Right,
Yep.
right, yeah. So favorability, it is a little inconsistent. If I didn't have a job approval, to go off of, I guess favorability would be the really the only thing that you could use.
The favorability spread between Clinton and Trump wasn't bad, but you would also have to factor in third parties, like, because she was at 42% and Trump was like at 37%, so it was like D+5. But if you factored in third parties, you could have gotten like a 2 to 3 point victory.
Yeah, and that wouldn't have been too far off from the actual result.
No.
But yeah, I definitely think that 2016 was like that election. Man, it's like Lichtman was the only guy who got that one. I'll give that one to him. As bad as his model is looking right now, like, because he's just putting so much bias into it. With his
that's the problem. It's like not even like at this point he's just doing mental gymnastics to get his result. Like, it's like, really, there's no primary contest. Like, what are you talking about? Like, they literally just got rid of the incumbent president. Like, I don't understand that. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So that's the one that it's like, that's not even valid anymore. Like, that almost should be a key that he needs to, like, how like sometimes like certain things just don't apply anymore. Like, that's just a key that probably shouldn't even apply anymore for this cycle. Like, it's just like the circumstances were so unconventional that they should just completely he should just remove that key and move the threshold down to 5 keys false, because that's what he would have to do. If he removes a key, he's gonna have to drag the threshold down. That's what would make sense. And at that point, Trump would be winning already. He'd already be winning, because he'd have the 5 true key or 5 false keys, because he's already at 5, and Harris would have 7. So it's like, technically, he needs to remove that key for this cycle. Like, it doesn't even apply anymore. Social unrest, I don't know why he has that true. I don't know why he has that true at all. I don't know why. He needs to put that false, because the assassination or the near assassination attempt of Trump should have been enough to do that. And he literally admitted, oh yeah, no, I'm not going to change the key for that. And it's like, really? I felt like you could have changed it. Like, I don't know. I felt like he definitely could have changed it a bit.
Well, I'll tell you, at the DNC that's coming up in a couple days now,
Yeah.
if they actually have like 100,000 protesters,
Dude, he's gonna have to
at the
flip the
United
key,
Center,
bro.
like he better flip that key after that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But yeah, it's like he claims to be consistent, but he flip-flops on his keys all the time. Like, oh, he said 2016 the third party vote key was
Yeah.
false, benefiting Trump, and third parties got like under 5%, but now third parties are projected to get over 5%, yet he's calling it true for Harris. That makes no
Apparently,
sense. He's
well,
Go
third
ahead.
parties may not get over 5% now. So, to be honest with you, I may actually give him that one. Um, but luckily for us, that key was already going true for Harris in his column anyways. So, that doesn't really hurt Trump in his model. Um, but if you go to, what was I going to look up again? Um, okay, yeah. Okay, 13 keys to the White House. Funny enough, he actually did not have the party key false for Clinton. He actually had it true, but there's an explanation for it. Lichtman marked key 4 as true in the 2016 edition of his book, but stated in September 2016 that it had turned false because Libertarian nominee Gary Johnson was polling at 12 to 14%, indicating he was likely to receive 6 to 7% of the vote. In October 2016, he stated that the key could turn true again if Johnson's polling numbers dropped, but at this point there were 6 other false keys, meaning he could predict a Hillary Clinton loss in any case. By election day, Johnson was polling below the 5% aggregate, below the 10% threshold, which automatically, and he ultimately received 3.3% of the vote. While third-party candidates received a total of 5.7%, Lichtman states that multiple third-parties candidates receiving 5% or more of the vote cumulatively, with no single candidate doing so, will not turn the key false. But arguably, they're the reason why Clinton lost the election. Like, they all broke for Biden like 3-1. So his logic on this is like completely flawed.
Well, yeah, Jill Stein, leftist Green Party. If she hadn't run in 2016, Trump is not flipping the Rust Belt. He's not doing it.
No,
She got like 1% nationally, and he won all those states by less than 1 point each. So it's like, yeah, it makes no sense.
no,
The
there's
guy,
no
like,
way he would have won.
I think his model. Yeah, yeah. There's no way. There's no way.
Yeah, because
And
Stein
so
Stein
yeah,
got basically got 1% in Michigan, Wisconsin, and in Pennsylvania, Johnson got like 2.4%. And third party voters broke like 3-1 for Biden. That's why Biden was able to win Minnesota by such a big amount. And that's why I'm kind of starting to have questions about some of these deep blue states, because it's like, if Kennedy still gets over 5%, which is definitely possible, he's going to eat into some of those margins. And I think that they may actually be underestimating his polling numbers again. I think he might actually be underestimated now, because the polling bias for Harris is probably so bad that when they include the full field, it's probably affecting Kennedy within the response bias as well.
yeah, potentially.
That's definitely a possibility. Now, has he fallen a bit? Yeah, but I think he's probably going to get like, I think he's going to get 4 to 6% on election day. I can't see him not getting that much.
Yeah,
He was
he'll
polling.
he'll get something around that for sure.
And that's the thing. Alan Lichtman cannot have that party key false or true, because Kennedy, if he gets 4%, the other candidates are bound to add up to over like 5%. So it's like, I
Right.
mean, at that point, I don't even know what to say. But now I want to ask you something, because I'm actually pretty curious about this now, because obviously we had talked about, the Rust Belt's kind of a concern for Republicans in 2028, or whatever. But if Vance is the nominee in 2028, if Trump wins and their presidency is somewhat decent, how do you think that election's going to go? Because honestly, the only Democrat I could see even having a shot against Vance is probably Shapiro.
Yeah.
That's about
Yeah,
it.
I mean-
And I don't even think Shapiro wins Wisconsin. I actually think Vance, even like on a competitive map, I actually think Wisconsin's going to move to the right by quite a bit. I think Vance would win it by over 4 points in like almost any given scenario.
Yeah. I agree. I agree.
I
I think,
think I think
Vance.
Wisconsin's going to become like the next Iowa, basically.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. If you're talking about, what kind of voters that Vance appeals to, it's those Rust Belt voters right up there in the, like those working class voters, union voters.
Now I think
He's definitely.
Shapiro does very well in the urban areas, in my opinion. So that's why like Colorado, Oregon, Washington, they're actually above 15 points. So they're going to trend super far to the left, including New Mexico. I think New Mexico in 2028, I think would trend back a little bit left because Shapiro would probably do well in like the Albuquerque area. I think Alaska. What do you think about Alaska? Because Vance and Shapiro, I actually think that Vance would win it by under 5.
I'd say like 5 to 10 for Vance. He would definitely trend left.
Yeah, but I feel like it would be under 5 though. I think Josh would be a good candidate for Alaska. Like I think it would be one of those surprise states where it's like, whoa. Now, Arizona for Vance, I'm kind of not feeling it. I think Josh would do really good in Maricopa. I think Vance would continue to gain in the outer parts of Maricopa in the state, but I think Josh would just win Maricopa by like 3 to 5. Like, I can't see Vance winning Arizona.
Yeah, yeah. I think that Shapiro would probably do pretty well in Arizona. I think Nevada, I think Vance would do pretty well in Nevada. Like you're talking about those working class Hispanics.
Probably 2 to 4.
You,
It's like 2 to 4, something like that.
yeah, yeah. I agree.
Illinois
Yeah.
is safe. New York is safe. Like all these states are going to be safe because Josh is just going to do really good in the urban areas. Maybe Delaware and New Jersey are under 15 like that. Yes, I could see that happening. Minnesota, like 8 or 9 points for Josh. I think Josh wins Maine at large by possibly like 8 to 9, and like New Hampshire would be like a 9 to 10 point win. Like I don't even think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a long cost. Like I think it's going to be long gone for Vance. I don't think he's going to be able to win there either. I do think he wins North Carolina somewhat easily, though. I think he wins North Carolina by like maybe 6 to 7 points. Now, Georgia, I actually think Vance wins it by like probably like 1 to 2 points. I think he would trend left and Josh would do respectably with Atlanta voters and with black voters, but I don't think that he'd do well enough in the rules. I think Vance would do very good in the rules in some suburban areas to the point where I think he does win Georgia. And
Yeah,
as for
I think you go along there.
Pennsylvania, here's the thing with Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's going to have like a super far right trend. Like I think it's going to be the next Iowa. Like basically the Republicans are guaranteed at every election at that point. Like it's going to be like a 4 to 7 point victory depending on like the national popular vote. I think it's going to be like the next Iowa. Now, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Virginia. Now, Virginia I think is probably lean. I actually think Vance could do respectably well here against Shapiro because I think that Vance would actually do somewhat well with like these kind of like college educated voters. In my opinion, I just think Josh Shapiro would do way better with like older voters, and that's why he wins Illinois, New York, Colorado, and all these states by pretty big margins. So, I mean, he'd do well there, but I think Virginia may actually vote for him by under 5 because I think Vance would just do really good in like rural Virginia and probably run it up in some of the suburban areas, and Glenn Youngkin kind of would have pushed the state to the right a tiny bit. So maybe like 3 to 4 points. And then Nebraska's second. I think Shapiro wins that. So the election basically comes down to Michigan and Pennsylvania. Now, I think Wisconsin is probably going to be too far of a rightward win for it to kind of not go, for Pennsylvania to not go to Vance. I think Vance probably wins Pennsylvania by like 1 to 2, but Josh Shapiro would do really good in like suburban Philadelphia. Like, he would probably do better in eastern Pennsylvania than Biden did, but Vance would hold up in the Philadelphia city and probably hold up in the western part of the state.
Yeah, I think so.
The only one that I have a question about is Michigan. That's the one that I'm like iffy about, because I could see Shapiro winning it by like half a point to like a point. I definitely don't think he wins it by more than that because I think the rural areas would have trended even more Republican. So maybe it goes to Shapiro, maybe it goes to Vance, and Vance gets 301, or he gets 286. But what do you think about Michigan in this case?
Yeah, I think Michigan would definitely be the closest of the three. If Shapiro's gonna, pick off any one of those states, it's gonna be Michigan. I kind of feel like Michigan would still go to Vance, just because, just because the Rust Belt votes all together, and it doesn't mean that they will forever. They're not going to. At some point that's gonna, the trend is gonna break. But I definitely think that Vance would do so well in the rurals that he would kind of offset a lot of what Shapiro would be able to do, in a Detroit, or in the major urban areas. And I feel like, yeah, Vance would probably hold on there. It would be by a tilt margin. But yeah, at least for as far as Vance is concerned, his appeal to the Rust Belt is just so strong. I mean, if you're talking about Shapiro, he definitely is the best
Right, yeah.
candidate that Democrats have for the Rust Belt. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to balance it out with that. But I definitely think Vance is, he would do really well in the Rust Belt for sure.
Yeah, and do you think my take on Wisconsin is like decently accurate? Like, because I truly think if Vance is the nominee, I almost think it's going to be impossible for them to lose Wisconsin.
Yeah, I mean, it's been definitely the most favorable Rust Belt state for Republicans. It's been trending kind of the hardest to the right of the three. And yeah, definitely with Vance, I definitely think that he would definitely push it pretty far to the right. Like how fast is the trend gonna exactly be? Who knows? But yeah, for sure, I definitely think that Wisconsin could, we could see like the early stages of when Iowa started to, flip to Trump like it did in 2016. It's going to be a bit of a slower trend, but I definitely think that, yeah, for sure, it would be the furthest right-leaning state of the Rust Belt.
What about Arizona? Because I have Shaw Shapiro winning Arizona by like 2 to 3. Like I have him winning it like pretty easily. And then I have Georgia's like 2 to 3. So like this is gonna be like the first election where Georgia and Arizona are actually kind of voting kind of far apart of each other.
Yeah, I think Vance would hold on in Georgia, by maybe 1 to 2 points. And Arizona, that state's definitely been trending to the left. I think Shapiro would probably win Arizona. I agree. I think it would be by a tilt margin, not lean. And I think it's just because, like, I don't know. I think the national environment in this election would be, hmm, I'd say it'd probably be tied, to be honest.
Yeah, it would because
Because if
Florida would be over
Republicans are,
15. Yeah.
yeah, it'd probably be around a tied national environment. And at that point, like Arizona, would probably start voting to the left of the nation for the first time,
Yeah.
because it's still been voting to the right. Like it voted 4 points to the right in 2020. But yeah, by this point, it could vote in line with the nation, but I think that it would probably go for Shapiro in a tied national environment. Georgia would probably stay for Vance, just because even though it is a more pro-establishment state, I feel like he would still do well enough in the rurals to offset a lot of the urban gains for Shapiro. And yeah, I think that's a pretty solid map, to be honest. That looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think this is probably what the map would be, and then Michigan could honestly go like either way. Now, like honestly, if they put up anybody else besides Shapiro, I think they're cooked. If it's Vance and they put up anybody else besides Shapiro, I can't see Vance losing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I cannot see
For sure. They
Vance
have
losing. He probably would win Arizona too.
Yeah, if it's not Shapiro, I think Vance would probably hold on in Arizona, to be honest. I mean, yeah, they just have no bench. They have no
Yeah.
popular person. Like, you could talk about a Newsom. He has a 44% approval rating in his own state.
No, yeah, no. He would
So it's like,
not. No.
you know, I mean, yeah. And it's like, sure, you could say that the Democrats, they do have a really strong base, as Republicans do, and so they're going to vote blue no matter who. But I just think that Gavin would not be able to appeal to moderates like at
No.
all. If they do 5 minutes of research into his policies and what he's done to that state, yeah, it's just he would be cooked. And Van honestly, because and yeah, the Rust Belt would win this election, And I know that we've talked about this before, like
Right.
when the census changes in the 2030s, Republicans would have a winning path in the Sun Belt because those Sun Belt states would be
Right.
gaining
That's
electoral votes like Texas
something
and Florida.
that not a lot of people, not a lot of people have been talking about, and Gold Crown really hasn't even talked about on his channel either. But this is the first time you're going to hear it from me or him. Is that yes, in the 2030s, the Republicans will literally be able to win North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, and actually just win the election. Period. Like they would just literally be able to get over 270, and it makes sense because right now, if you give the Republican the Sun Belt, and you give Minnesota, all these traditionally blue states, and the Rust Belt goes blue, the Democrats at 270. Now let's say more than likely Texas would probably gain, like, let's say it gains two, right? Electoral votes. Let's say that
Yeah.
Texas gains two electoral votes probably. Florida probably does the same. States like Wisconsin probably lose population. They have been, you know, Michigan would too. Pennsylvania would probably lose a few electoral votes. New York probably loses a bit. Georgia, Virginia may go up actually, like an electoral vote. Illinois goes down a few. Colorado probably gains, probably goes up to like 12. New Mexico probably goes up to 6. Arizona goes up to maybe 12. Nevada's like 7 electoral votes. You'd see California probably drop down to like 51, probably. And at that point, states like North Carolina may gain. Georgia may gain an electoral vote. So by then, at that point, I mean, what are we at here? Because there would have to be 3 more electoral votes. And like, even Ohio probably even loses some too. Like, that's the thing. Like, even Ohio. And so at that point, it's like, yeah, these southern states are going to gain in the census. That's what's been happening for years. So
Right.
we are basically, Gold Crown Politics is correct. At some point, they're literally not going to be able to do it. They're not going to be able
Yeah.
to win through the Rust Belt anymore. This would be it. Look here. It adds up 275, 263. That's 538 electoral votes. And look, it's the Sun Belt. And I didn't even do crazy shifts because the Rust Belt's going to keep losing population. It has been forever. And these Sun Belt states have been slowly gaining over time. And Arizona, to an extent, has kind of been stagnant, but it did go up by 1 electoral vote, I think, at some point in the past 20 years. Nevada probably goes up 1. I could see Colorado gaining 1. So, yeah, Gold Crown Politics is right. At some point, the Republicans can literally win Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina, or win. And possibly even, like, look, this Wisconsin Arizona path, like, let's say Arizona trends too far to the left and Michigan, Pennsylvania are voting to the left that cycle, but Wisconsin is like a lead margin or whatever, and then Nevada's lean, and like Georgia and North Carolina are lean. Republicans are already winning the electoral college without any tilt states.
Yeah.
So contrary to
Right.
popular belief, for the past few years, oh, it's over for Republicans. There's no way they can win. Demographics are gonna trend away from them. Funny enough, Vance's election victory may actually be pretty easy. Because if he just wins Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, which if they don't nominate Shapiro, this will probably happen. He doesn't even need the Rust Belt to win, probably. He would just win probably through the Sun Belt, and that's it. So winning for Democrats is actually gonna probably get pretty hard if they're not winning Arizona. And Wisconsin's been trending far to the right. So even this scenario that this year would give them 271 to 264, in 2032 it'll give them 270. It gives Republicans 272 to 266.
Right. And yeah, the blue wall for Democrats is really up in the Rust Belt there. It's what has allowed them to win, so many elections. I mean, the electoral map was so rough for Republicans, especially under Bush in the 2000s.
Yes.
Like, because the blue wall was always pretty much a guarantee for Democrats. Yeah, Bush had to do really well in the suburban areas of Virginia and Colorado to flip those states, but then they flipped to Obama in 2008, and at that point, it was like and so funny because like Trump, he really was the only GOP candidate in 2016 that could have won theoretically, because if you lose Colorado and Virginia, from Bush, like, you can't win without the Rust Belt. And so
Yeah.
Trump, because he flipped the Rust Belt, he was the only GOP candidate who could have won, in my opinion. And so the Rust Belt definitely now still has its importance. Like, that blue wall up there, you still got to flip it if you want to win an election. And that's why I'm really happy that Trump did choose JD Vance as his running mate, just because he has that appeal to those voters. Now, I think in, 2032, when the census changes, as you outlined, the Sun Belt will then gain, more significance, and the Rust Belt will lose significance. And I think that, at that point, it would probably be more important, to go with, a person who's kind of, who's going to gain, those voters down in the Sun Belt. So you're
Right.
talking younger voters, who can appeal to more diverse voters as well, with blacks and Hispanics. And yeah, so that is definitely something to think about for the future in
Like
terms of how,
100%, I think at some point they're gonna pick Byron Donalds for a VP pick. Like, he's a realistic VP pick in the 2030s. He's probably
yeah,
gonna end up being
yeah.
a VP pick at some point. Now, I'm not like 100% sure about that, but I'd say the likeliness of him being the VP pick is pretty high. I don't think Vance would pick him, but I think whoever would run after Vance would probably pick Byron.
Yeah, I think that he could definitely be picked. Yeah.
100% I think he will get picked. And if they run, like, if whoever runs in 2032 and 20, well, Vance would be running for re-election, but in 2020, 2036 and 2040, if they somehow win those, and if Byron runs in 2044, I mean, at that point, I don't know how Byron would lose either, because I think at that point with Byron, he's actually like the first like reparationally African American nominee for president. So it's
Yeah.
like that whole racial like attack line that the Democrats are gonna have it's completely gonna go out the window with Byron Donalds.
Yeah.
A hundred
Absolutely.
percent it would go out the window. Like, I actually think he could probably get like 35% of black voters. Probably even more by then, to be honest.
Yeah, and at that point, when the Sun Belt's when it's more important, yeah, I mean, yeah, Byron would do phenomenally in a state like Georgia with a 30% African
Yes.
American rate.
Dude, he would probably
Yeah,
win
he
that
he would
state. He would probably win it by 8 or something. Probably even more. Like, he'd do very well
he'd
there.
do yeah, he'd do exceptionally well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he would
and
be
then
like,
if you're talking Arizona, I think he would do pretty
yeah.
well there as well.
No, I
So,
think he would win
he would
Arizona
appeal to
too.
young voters.
Now, just to show you
Yeah.
something about 2008, I actually did the thing where you tie the popular vote on this map website. You can tie the popular vote to look at the partisan leaning of every single state, and literally McCain would have needed to have one Indiana, Ohio, Virginia, Florida, North Carolina. That still doesn't get him there yet. He's still not there. Let me
Yeah,
see what I'm
really
missing
difficult
here.
map.
Nebraska's second would have to go, so he's at 260. Where are these 6 extra electoral college votes? Oh, it's because I have the I don't know why I have that's weird. Why is it the same electoral count as? Oh, that's annoying. I guess when you shift it by the popular vote, it changes the electoral math. Like, it changes it back to the 2020 census, which is really weird. I don't know why. I'm going to try to change it back and see what happens. No, it doesn't let me do it. That is so weird. But either way, basically, McCain would be at here, and the closest state out of all these lean blue states would be Colorado. And even with Colorado, he would tie in the electoral college. So he would have needed to have won the popular vote by like 2 to 3 points to even have won the election. Because he would have needed to pick off Iowa or New Hampshire.
Right. Yeah.
And probably
Map
New
used to
Hampshire.
be-
And I don't know exactly which one was closer. We can actually try to take a look at that and see which one was closer. It was actually the same. Oh, okay, no, hold on. 2008, 9.6. Okay, so he would be winning with Iowa. So this would be his winning map. This is how John McCain would have won that election.
Yeah, it would have been just that could not have possibly happened. I mean, yeah,
it could have, but Obama gained significantly in the polling. They were in for a pretty close election until the recession happened. So,
that's true. That's true.
And if you look at 2012, you kind of almost have the same problem, because if you go here and shift by popular vote as well, you encounter the same problem. I mean, Virginia probably, because at that point, you would have already had Indiana. So, like, Ohio, Virginia, Florida, that would have flipped. And at that point, Romney could have won with either Colorado or Pennsylvania. And I actually wonder which one would have been closer. No, they were basically the same thing. 51.2, 46. I think Colorado is slightly closer than Pennsylvania, I think. But either it would have been through Colorado or it would have been through Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Which at that point, it's like, I mean, I don't even know. At that point, it's just kind of, it's really not looking great. Now, Trump, if you look at the partisan leaning, I mean, at that point, he would have been fine, because he would have even won Minnesota, New Hampshire, Maine would have been tied, Nevada. Funny enough, if you actually look at 1996, if you tie the popular vote here, look at the map. The Republican would have actually won in a tied electorate. And Oregon, for a period of time, was actually a very middle state, like a tilting Republican state. It was in 96. It was in 2000, because everything basically voted with the nation in 2000. If you actually tie it, Wisconsin, Iowa, New Mexico, and Oregon would have all been, state, and Florida. So, and then if you look at like 1992, you would have seen that Republicans theoretically would have lost ground in the Electoral College here, but Oregon was pretty close for a bit.
It was, yeah.
98's also pretty interesting too, because if you look at 98 and you do this, look at that. Iowa was plus 18 for the Democrats. California was lean Democrat nationally. South Dakota was lean Democrat nationally. Colorado was voting with the nation with Michigan. Virginia was voting 13 points to the right of the nation. Georgia 12.5, Florida 14 points, and New Jersey by 6. New Hampshire was voting to the right of the nation by 18 points. New York only 12, Pennsylvania by 5, Wisconsin by 11. So it is the map has definitely changed.
Absolutely.
84, I want to see this one. Ooh, look, Minnesota's the bluest state besides D.C.
Yeah.
And California would have been lean. Oregon's actually the most Democrat state. It's actually the most Democrat state out of the three in the West. And Nevada would have been R plus 16 with New Hampshire. It's pretty interesting that New Hampshire used to be one of the most Republican states. And you see this kind of like Democrat coalition here. And then like Ohio and Michigan are like both voting with the nation basically, which is also kind of interesting too.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see how different it used to be. It used to be like that.
And then in 1980, oh wow, look at 1980.
Yeah, that's weird.
Ohio voting with the nation again. Michigan still to the left. New York would have trended to the left the next cycle. New Jersey voting to the right of the nation. Georgia plus 25. Carter, wow. Virginia plus 3 to the right of the nation. New Hampshire. That's really weird. I didn't think New Hampshire would be one of the most Republican states. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, this is a super weird map. And then in 1997, yeah, the Republicans were up in a tied national environment because Mississippi and Wisconsin would have flipped.
Yeah.
And Texas already started trending to the right after, like, 1976 was the last time that it basically voted to the left, pretty much, of the nation. That's like the last time it did that.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
God, look at the 72 electoral map here. So that's weird. California would have been to the left, would have trended Republican in the 80s, and then would have moved back. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Maine at large was tied. Vermont was voting to the right of the nation. Jeez. And Maryland. Oh my goodness. But then the South. Man, the South really trended to the left really fast. Look at the... look. So you can see look at the difference. Look at the difference between 76 and... like, some of these swings are pretty nuts. Like, if you look at this, some of the swings are actually pretty crazy. Like, look at Georgia. It trends like 50 points to the left.
Yeah.
In like a single cycle. And like Arkansas, the same thing. Texas would have trended like 10 points to the left. 76 would have been a really hard election to predict because you probably wouldn't have been able to get those swings like that.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't have been able to predict those swings at that point. Like if you go to 68, and at that point it gets complicated because you have the third party vote here. And this was the tied national environment. So actually, if you think about it, you could probably count those as Democrat states. But even looking at like let's look at technically speaking, actually, if you and then 19, yeah. Well, actually 64 was the last one. We need to do 64 first. Yeah, and this was, look at this. This was just bizarre. So funny enough, in 1964 and 1968, the national environments between the states were actually pretty similar. Like, if you look at them, they weren't that different. I mean, some states trended Republican, but for the most part, they were pretty... it was pretty the same, pretty much the same almost. It was just a redder environment than the last one, so that's pretty cool, too. And then if you look at, like, 1960, that basically was the electorate. When you click nonpartisan voting, none of the states changed. Like, literally everything stays the same. None of the states flip at all. So, literally every single state was voting with the nation. Or, like, this was the partisan leaning of every single state, basically. Huh. Look at Wisconsin, how it moves. Like, it trends in opposite directions every cycle. Like, look, here it's red, then it goes blue. Then it goes red, then it goes blue. Then it goes red. Like, that's pretty funny. Michigan.
That's weird.
Michigan would have also been trending super Democrat for, like, years. And it slowly would have moved to the right, and then it would have just completely did a 180.
Yeah, everything was so much
30,
back then.
30, 32, and then it would have just swung out of nowhere. Like, you wouldn't have been able to... like, 76 would have basically been impossible to predict. It would have basically been impossible because there's so many state trends that you wouldn't have been able to predict.
Yeah, just completely unpredictable.
I mean, the only way you probably could have been able to get it... I mean, this was a pretty Democrat, or, like, this was a pretty Republican national environment, but still... like, it almost... it would have been pretty hard. Alaska's funny, because Alaska has only voted Democrat in 1964, but you see here, it trends... it's actually voting with the nation here. That's pretty funny. But... alright guys, that's pretty much it for the stream. We are 80 subscribers away from 30,000. Goldcrown, I don't know if you could do a community post. That would be nice. We're now 79 subscribers away. So guys, make sure to go ahead and hit the like button. Subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next